Hello, I'm Rick Hertless, founder of His Gospel Power. Thank you for joining with our program as we look into the book of Philemon. And as we've said most every day, we're looking into the Bible for the last days, understanding all of the things that are happening, or maybe not understanding all the things that are happening, but really we understand all that they are happening through the lens of the Bible, through understanding through Jesus telling us there would be last days. All of these things would happen in the last days. And in fact, they are happening in the last days. So, but we're taking the Bible and we're looking at the Bible through the lens of the Bible, each book that we're looking at, to help us to prepare for these last days that we are in. Now, Philemon, of course, we've already discussed and told, but we're going to say again because maybe this is your first time to listen to the program. Philemon was a slave owner, and Onesimus was helping Paul, was with Paul. He more than likely left Philemon without consent, but he was helping Paul. Or maybe Philemon sent Onesimus to Paul, and they overstayed, or anything like that. We don't really know the whole story, but what we do know is that Paul is asking Philemon to treat Onesimus as a brother, because Philemon, evidently, he is saved, he knows Jesus, and so does Onesimus, and so Paul is asking him to accept him as a brother, understanding that he's more, and we already have looked, he says, no longer as a slave, but more than a slave, a beloved brother. So he is asking him to accept him for that. Now, we talked about in the beginning of the week the fact that really Christianity did the best thing to get rid of slavery than anything has ever happened, because the masters would get saved, then they would get their slaves saved because they were compelled to give the gospel, and then, of course, because now they're brothers, they no longer felt like they should enslave their brother. So that's what happened, and that did more to get rid of slavery than anything else has ever done, was Christianity. So now we are in verse 17 of Philemon, and it says, "If then you count me as a partner, receive him as you would me." Of course, this is Paul once again writing to Philemon, and he's talking about Onesimus. "But if he's wronged you or owes you anything, put that on my account. I, Paul, am writing with my own hand. I will repay, not to mention to you that you owe me even your own self besides." Now, talk about the businessman there. Is like, okay, now you put this on my bill, I will repay, but don't forget you owe me, so this just comes off the bill that you owe me. That's kind of what he is saying here. I find that I thought that was a pretty interesting way of putting it. "And yes, brother, let me have joy from you in the Lord. Refresh my heart in the Lord." So he is making a plea to Philemon. Please accept this brother, and if he's done anything wrong to you, put it on my account. Accept him as a brother, though, not as a slave. Now, that does not say that Onesimus would not necessarily still be a slave. Remember, see, it's kind of what people, I think, don't realize is back in those days, slaves could basically they could just be employees, because many of them were voluntary slaves, and saying, look, I can't make it out in the world, and so I'm going to be a slave. Really, and if you think about it, welfare is like that. Well, I hate to say it like that, but if you're saying, look, I can't make it in the world, so government, you take care of me, now I'm your slave. That's where you're putting yourself when that happens. And so
you could almost say that really about any job.
And that's what I was saying earlier in the week, is really any job, once you become an employee of that company. Now, you're a voluntary slave because you could come in any day and say, you know what? I don't like the way you're treating me. I don't like how much you're paying me, and I'm leaving. Now, and as a slave, though, once you've made yourself a voluntary slave, you couldn't just do that. You had to be released. But still, it works out the same way.
Yeah, it's modern day slavery.
Yeah, indentured servitude. It's all kinds of different names for it. But it's
Yeah, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I didn't give this detail on it, but if you were independent and had no bills, that's entrepreneurship. That was one of those self-slaveries, is getting yourself into debt, because then you become a slave to the person you owe the money to and the person you have to earn the money from, because you don't have. Now, small business owners that are debt free, they are really out of that. Now, granted, they don't have the choice, but they owe taxes, which that's why I was creating that point. But just think of an independent business owner that has no debts. Imagine the weight that is off of them because they don't owe anybody anything, compared to somebody that has a home, a car, a mortgage, all these obligations, and they have to work to pay those bills. What happens if you don't have the job? Can't pay the bills and you lose what you have. Being independent, I mean, I look at my grandparents who have passed away that owned everything. They owned one or two houses. They owned all their vehicles. They paid cash for everything and had money in the bank. If something would have happened in the economy, 20, 30 years ago, they had the buffer that we don't have today.
Right. Because even if it would have come to the fact where they took all their money out of the bank, well, they still wouldn't have lost their cars, their houses, or anything of that sort.
Right.
And that day is approaching as well. Take all the money going out of the bank. That day is this world.
I was listening to an economist about the stock market and how fake that is. If anybody still has $1 in the stock market, I'm not saying this in a mean way, but you have to be crazy to have $1 in the stock market.
Well,
today.
I mean, basically, the stock market, you're shooting craps. You might as well go to Vegas. Really, if you've got all your money in the stock market, you are really taking a big gamble, because one day this will happen. I mean, there are too many economists that say this will happen. It's going to happen someday. Now, is it going to be this year? Is it going to be next year? Is it going to be 4 years from now? I don't know, but it will happen someday. And it really has already happened. Was that 2008 when it just crashed and everybody lost their 401k?
Yeah.
Now, many of them, I guess, that stuck it out, they got a lot of that back, maybe and then some. But one day you're going to wake up, and I don't know if the stock market will be zero or not, but it's going to be so close to it, it'll just be bust.
Well, the one I was listening to, he's a Christian economist. His name's Gerald Celente, and I love this guy. He said that he has his own magazine, and he didn't predict that the economy was going to crash years ago, but he said the reason it hasn't collapsed yet was because he never was able to foresee quantitative easing, the repo market, which is just another slush fund they created. They keep creating these methods to pump fake money into the economy to keep it alive, which is the only reason the stock market's going. He said economists weren't even able to predict all the schemes they were able to come up with to keep the economy inflated. He said it should have crashed years ago, but they keep making fake money to prop it up, and it has to quit at some point soon.
Well, I mean, our money is no longer backed by the gold standard. It was said, let me see, it was the 60s that Nixon took us off the gold standard. I think it was somewhere around, 68 or something like that he took us off the gold standard. We went on to the oil standard. We went on to the petrodollar.
Yeah.
And at that point, China said that is the day that America started to decline. That was that they said, they went ahead and marked it on their calendar, that now it's only a matter of time now America will crumble.
Wait, what are you talking about? We're not backed by gold. I saw Obama go to Fort Knox and they handed him a brick of gold.
One bar of gold, exactly.
yeah. That's all that. Well,
that may be all that's in there.
Right. Well, I went to Fort Knox as a soldier. It's probably been 10 years ago now. You can drive around Fort Knox. There's a fence and no guards.
Right.
If there is really trillions of dollars worth of gold in there, there's no one guarding it.
Well, And it's quite possible that what it could be, this is China, and I don't remember what country it was that bought their gold back.
Well,
China gave
Germany did?
No, but I'm talking about just recently. It was like Indonesia or Taiwan or somebody, they got their gold back, they thought.
Oh, yeah.
They got however many tons of gold it was. And what they found out is it was a bunch of metal with gold plating on it.
Yes.
And so they thought they were getting back 300 tons of gold or whatever it was. And with all just the gold plating, they probably got a half a ton at the most, if that much. And so, and there was a big scandal about that. Many people, I guess, didn't see it. But we are not on the gold standard, and chances are we don't have any gold. So if you financially, even if you don't have any money right now, buy some silver. Because chances are you have, when you say you don't have any money, there's a good chance you have $50.
There's things you're paying for you aren't
right.
going to need.
Right. And I mean, but chances are you have $50 a month. You can buy 1 ounce of silver, because if you only get 1 ounce of silver, you're going to have to pay shipping. So it'll cost you $50. If you're smart, then you'll buy $100 worth. Then you don't have to pay any shipping, so you don't, you're getting that extra. But if all you've got, say, $50 a month, buy some silver. And then when the bottom goes out, at least you're not left with nothing. You would have something. You would not be left with nothing. And when the bottom goes out of the dollar, and it's going to happen. And like I said, I don't know when. And it may not be until after. It's my belief, from everything the prophets are saying and everything I've heard from the Lord, if Trump gets back in office, we will get 4 more years of reprieve. Now, why do I say if? If it's God's will, then he'll just be in there. Well, that's true, and it's not true. And let me tell you how that is. God has said, and it's always been that way. Remember what we talked about yesterday, I believe it was? If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves. If.
It's a conditional
promise.
It's a conditional.
It's if, then.
Yes.
It's called if, then. In theological terms, they just always called it if, then. It's, that's real hard to understand, right? If you do this, then this will happen. And it's the same exact thing with what's going on. If the church will humble themselves and pray, then Donald Trump will be president, and we will get 4 more years reprieve. But then after that, all bets are off. That 4 more years for you to prepare. That's what we're going to get. But if you're running around business as usual, just saying, well, get me back into my 4 walls of my church, that's my ostrich hole. The church is my ostrich hole. I'm going to stick my head down in there and pretend like nothing else is going on. Then we're going to get judged. That's the deal. The judgment will come. We're already seeing judgment on the church to a large degree, a lot more than we ever thought we'd see in America. But it's going to get even worse.
And it goes back to my question when the pandemic started and they shut down churches. Did you do anything in the meantime? For those, 4 months they were completely shut down? Did you do anything, or did you go home and sit and watch reruns of something on TV?
Right.
Or did you fulfill the Great Commission while you weren't allowed to go into the building?
And are you sick of it and now saying, you know what? We're just going back to church. That's what's happening in a lot of churches. I mean, John MacArthur, they're going back to church. Now, our fake media, our fake news said he has had, what's the word they used? I can't think of the word they used, where the COVID is now just taking over the church.
Yeah.
What's that word that they're trying to say about John? I can't say. But anyway, COVID is now, because they have not listened, COVID's taking over the church. Well, you want to know what the truth is? The truth is, now there are thousands of people that go to that church. I don't even know how many members he's got. But he's got about 10,000 members at least. I know it's a big auditorium. So how many's in there, I don't know. But I know it for sure it's more than 5,000. Out of thousands of members that attend that church, 3 people came down with COVID and they isolated themselves. 3 people.
Get a vitamin C IV and call it a day.
Exactly. They isolated themselves because they had COVID, and the news is saying, "Oh, well, see,
it's an outbreak."
It's an outbreak.
Yeah,
That's what it was. It was an outbreak. Thank you. I could not think of the word.
It just came to me.
There's an outbreak at John MacArthur's church. There's an outbreak, and it's like, no, there's not. There's 3 people that have come down with COVID. They're not even sick. They just decided to quarantine themselves because they got COVID. And so that's the disingenuousness of the media that they're trying to tear and trying to maintain control. It's what we were talking about yesterday, that the control, they're trying to maintain control. These people that we have elected think they are our rulers. And in fact, because of the laziness of, I'm going to say of Christians of the church, have allowed them to think they are our rulers for all of these years. And we are not electing a king. We are electing a representative. Instead, we've allowed them to be our king. And now everybody's wondering, well, how did it come to this? Well, because everybody's just been around their own business, and nobody has ever called the politicians on the fact that they're not our ruler. They're our representative.
Yeah, and it's... I heard a story one time about a pastor that was in a meeting with President Trump right after he got elected. And it was all the evangelical leadership that he has around him. And, Trump was under the impression that they wanted the 501c3 revoked. So he mentioned it. He said, I plan to get rid of this stupid policy from LBJ, President LBJ, one of the most liberal presidents ever. And they all just kind of looked at him.
They didn't say a word.
They didn't say a word.
They didn't cheer. They didn't clap. But they were like,
so that's,
yeah, well, what, and?
Yeah, so it's like,
they don't understand
they didn't
that
care.
They have placed themselves under the authority of the government.
Yeah, so why would Trump do something for the evangelical community if they don't care about it?
Well, they didn't. And but the sad part about it is they didn't even understand what they have done by being under 501c3. I had somebody that asked me the other day, why do you not have a 501c3? I think he wanted to give me money, but yet I don't have a 501c3, and so it's not going to be a tax deduction. So
I guess we need to do a program on that biblical principle again.
And it's like, and I told him, I said, well, because I did not want to be under the authority of the government. I can now talk about politics without worrying about coming under the IRS or somebody trying to come against me. I don't have to do that.
And then, and then anybody that donates to the program, they'll receive their reward from God, not from the government.
That's right. Well, that's all the time that we have. Thanks for joining with our program. Please go to hisgospelpower.org, click on the donate button or the contact us button. Until next time, I pray you receive His gospel power today.
He died for you. He died for me. From our sin, He set us free. He loved us so, His life He gave. So if we ask, we can be saved. He's calling you, He's calling you. Jesus Christ is calling you. If He's touched your heart and soul, let Jesus make you whole. Come near with me, and we will pray that all your sin be washed away. Don't be afraid, don't be ashamed. Just come and pray. Come let Jesus make you whole. If you feel him touching you, confess your sin.